The cosmos was a vast, lonely expanse, but for smuggler Jack Riker, it meant freedom. His battered cargo ship streaked past nameless stars, carrying untraceable crates to the lawless fringe worlds. It was a dangerous dance, staying one step ahead of the Galactic Council enforcers, but for an adrenaline junkie like Jack, that was part of the thrill. Leaning back in the pilot's chair, Jack watched the swirling colors of hyperspace, absent-mindedly fiddling with the wedding band he still wore. Even 2 years after losing his bride Mira in a brutal pirate raid, the wound still felt fresh. He clenched his jaw, pushing down the grief. In this line of work, you didn't have the luxury of looking back. Suddenly, alarm klaxons blared as the ship lurched violently, yanked out of hyperspace by the gravity well of an uncharted planet. "What the hell?" Jack muttered, checking the dials. Some strange force had knocked the navcom offline. Flipping the manual override, Jack wrestled with the controls as the rust-red sphere loomed closer. All he could do was angle for the night side and hope for a clear landing zone. He'd jumped from an exploding ship before, nothing like imminent death to make you feel alive. The ship hit atmosphere like a brick, the hull glowing with the heat of re-entry. Jack gritted his teeth, pulling with all his strength to keep from ordering straight into the rocky wastes below. At the last moment, he gunned the reverse thrusters, slowing the ship enough for a bone-jarring skid across the planet's surface. Dust clouds billowed past the cracked viewports. Unfastening his harness, Jack stumbled to the hold. He had to secure that cargo, figure out where in the void he'd landed, and see if he could get this bucket airborne again before any scavengers came sniffing around. Outside, the stars shone coldly over the desolate plain, the coppery tang of alien soil stinging Jack's nose. He knelt by the hull, assessing the damage. The power cells could recharge, but one engine nacelle was shot, and the comms and navigation were completely fried. He was marooned. As Jack ran a grimy hand through his cropped blonde hair, a sudden glint of metal caught his eye. Among the monolithic boulders jutting up a few clicks away, something had reflected the starlight, something artificial. Another ship. He wasn't alone on this rock after all. Heart pounding, Jack grabbed his sidearm and a portable oxygen scrubber, making for the mysterious craft. If it was spaceworthy, it might be his only ticket out of here. But as he approached, he saw that the sleek, silvery ship was in even worse shape than his own, metal fragments scattered across the red sand. A chill snaked down Jack's spine. He'd never seen an alloy like that before. This was no human vessel. Warily, Jack stepped through a gash in the hull, his footsteps ringing on shimmering crystal decking. Banks of oval screens flickered with alien glyphs. He relaxed his grip on the sidearm. No one could have survived a crash like. Jack froze. There, slumped over the control panel, was the most hauntingly beautiful creature he'd ever seen. An unconscious alien female with lavender skin, fathomless dark eyes, and gracefully curved horns. Clearly a being of great importance, judging by her shimmering gown and bejeweled headdress. But as Jack peered closer, taking in her shallow breathing and the sticky sapphire blood trickling from her temple, he only had one thought. What in the seven hells have I gotten myself into? Uneasy alliance. As the alien female stirred, Jack stepped back, finger tightening on the trigger of his sidearm. Her obsidian eyes fluttered open, widening in shock and fear as she took in the human intruder. Jack held up his free hand in a universal gesture of peace. "Easy there, princess. I'm not going to hurt you," he said, keeping his voice low and soothing. "I'm just looking for a way off this rock, same as you." The alien regarded him warily, her delicate features hardening into an imperious mask. "You will address me as Her Imperial Majesty, Princess Zara of the Alphan Empire," she declared, her voice musical yet stern. "And I require no assistance from a primitive human brute." Jack bit back a laugh. Great, of all the aliens to be marooned with, he got a haughty princess with a superiority complex. "Look, your worshipfulness," he drawled, "I don't care if you're the queen of the whole damn galaxy. We're both stuck here, And like it or not, we need each other to survive. Zara glared at him, but her gaze darted to the ruined console of her ship. Jack could practically see the gears turning in her head as she realized the direness of her situation. Finally, she gave a curt nod. "Very well, human. I will accept your partnership for now," she said, as if the word left a bitter taste in her mouth. "But do not presume to command me. I am royalty, and I will be treated as such." Jack rolled his eyes. "As you wish, princess. Now, let's see about finding some shelter and supplies. This place doesn't exactly look like a luxury resort." Over the next few days, the unlikely duo trekked across the rugged alien landscape, foraging for edible plants and seeking refuge from the harsh elements. Jack quickly discovered that beneath Zara's haughty demeanor was a razor-sharp intellect and an uncanny affinity for technology. She was able to modify Jack's oxygen scrubber to filter the planet's air and even rig up a portable generator from the wreckage of her ship. But for all her brilliance, Zara was hopelessly out of her element in the untamed wilderness. She stumbled over the rocky terrain in her flowing gown, and her delicate skin blistered under the scorching alien sun. Jack found himself constantly having to come to her aid, much to Zara's chagrin. One particularly grueling afternoon, as they climbed a steep ravine in search of water, Zara's foot slipped on a loose stone. She tumbled backwards with a cry, but Jack lunged forward, catching her in his arms just before she hit the jagged rocks below. For a moment, they stayed frozen like that, Jack's heart pounding as he held Zara's slender form against his chest. Her dark eyes met his, wide with shock and something else, something that sent a jolt of electricity down Jack's spine. But the moment was shattered by a blood-chilling shriek from above. Jack's head snapped up, his blood running cold at the sight of the creature perched on the cliff's edge. It was massive, all glistening scales and razor-sharp claws, with a mouthful of dagger-like teeth, and it was staring right at them, its predatory gaze fixed on the easy prey caught in its sights. Jack slowly lowered Zara to the ground, never taking his eyes off the creature. "Run," he whispered, his hand reaching for his sidearm. "I'll hold it off." But Zara shook her head, drawing a sleek, silver device from the folds of her gown. "No, human," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "We fight together. I will not abandon you." As the creature tensed to spring, Jack felt a grim smile tug at his lips. Maybe there was more to this pampered princess than met the eye. Maybe, just maybe, they might make it out of this alive, together, hunted and haunted. The creature lunged, a blur of teeth and claws, but Zara was faster. She leveled her silver device at the beast, a pulse of blinding energy erupting from its tip. The creature howled as the blast seared its scaly hide, buying Jack just enough time to draw his sidearm and open fire. The air filled with the stench of burning flesh and ozone as they poured shot after shot into the thrashing monster. Finally, with a last gurgling cry, it slumped to the ground, twitching feebly. Jack lowered his weapon, breathing hard. He turned to Zara, a newfound respect in his eyes. "Nice shooting, princess. Fessy, not just a pretty face after all." Zara holstered her device, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "And you, human, are not entirely useless in a fight. Perhaps there is hope for your species yet." But their victory was short-lived. Over the next few days, as they trekked deeper into the alien wilderness, they caught glimpses of more creatures stalking them from the shadows, pack hunters, drawn to the scent of wounded prey. The constant danger wore on them both, fraying their nerves and dredging up old traumas. One night, as they huddled around a meager fire, Zara suddenly spoke, her voice soft and haunted. "I never wanted to be a princess, you know," she said, staring into the flickering flames. "I was happy in my lab, tinkering with machines. But when the Civil War broke out, I had to step up, had to be the leader my people needed." She fell silent, a single silvery tear tracing down her lavender cheek. "I failed them," she whispered. "I ran away like a coward. And now I'll never see them again." Jack hesitated, then reached out, covering her hand with his own. "I know a thing or two about running away," he said quietly. "After I lost my wife, I couldn't face the pain, so I buried myself in smuggling runs, always moving, never looking back." He met Zora's gaze, surprised to see understanding in her dark eyes. "But maybe that's what we needed, Princess. Maybe getting stranded here, fighting for our lives. Maybe it's a chance to stop running, to face our demons and come out stronger." Zora was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she twined her fingers with Jack's, a small, sad smile on her face. "Perhaps you are right, human. Perhaps there is wisdom in your words, primitive though they may be." Jack chuckled, the tension draining from his body at her tentative touch. "Well, stick with me, Princess. I've got plenty more where that came from." As the night wore on, they talked softly, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes, their fears. And slowly, the walls between them began to crumble, replaced by a fragile but growing trust. But even as they found solace in each other's company, the creatures drew ever closer, their hungry cries echoing through the alien night. Jack and Zara slept in shifts, one always on watch, weapons close at hand. Then, on the seventh night, the attack came. A seething mass of claws and fangs and lashing tails. The pack descended upon their makeshift camp, drawn by the scent of fresh meat. Jack and Zara fought back to back, blast of fire and energy pulses lighting up the darkness. But there were too many, an endless tide of snarling, snapping jaws. A claw raked across Jack's chest, sending him stumbling back with a cry of pain. Zara screamed his name, blasting the offending creature into oblivion. But in her moment of distraction, another monster lunged, bearing her to the ground beneath its crushing weight. Jack surged to his feet, ignoring the searing pain in his chest. He wouldn't lose her, not like this, not when they come so far. With a roar of fury, he charged at the creature, ramming his shoulder into its flank and sending it tumbling away from Zara's prone form. But even as he stood over her, weapon blazing, he knew it was hopeless. They were surrounded, cut off from any escape. This was the end, but at least they'd face it together. Then, just as the pack tensed for the final, fatal rush, a piercing whine split the air, followed by a blinding flash of light. The creatures howled in pain and fear, scattering into the night as the light resolved into the sleek, angular shape of a spacecraft hovering overhead. Jack and Zara stared up at the ship in shock and disbelief, hardly daring to hope. But as a hatch rised open and a familiar figure appeared, silhouetted against the glow of the ship's interior, Jack felt a grin split his blood-streaked face. "Well, Princess," he said, extending a hand to help Zara to her feet, "looks like our ride is here. You ready to blow this rock?" Zara took his hand, her eyes shining with relief and something more, something warm and tender. "With you, human, I am ready for anything." Together, hand in hand, they stepped into the light of the waiting ship, leaving the nightmares of the alien planet behind. But even as they soared into the star-strewn void, they both knew that the bond they'd forged in the crucible of survival would last a lifetime, and beyond. Love blooms in the wasteland. As the rescue ship carried them away from the desolate planet, Jack and Zara found themselves in a state of shock. The adrenaline that had sustained them through their ordeal was fading, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a swirl of conflicting emotions. They were given food, water, and medical attention by the ship's robotic crew, but even as their physical wounds were tended to, the psychological scars remained. They clung to each other like survivors of a shipwreck, finding comfort in the only familiar thing in this strange new reality. In the quiet moments between the bustle of the ship's routines, they talked softly, trying to process all that had happened. Zara spoke of her guilt, the weight of her royal duties pressing down on her like a physical burden. "I was so selfish," she whispered, her voice thick with self-recrimination. "I abandoned my people when they needed me most. How can I ever face them again, knowing what a coward I've been?" Jack reached out, cupping her cheek with a calloused hand. "You're not a coward, Zara," he said firmly. You're a survivor. And sometimes, surviving means making hard choices, choices that haunt you. But that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Zara leaned into his touch, a small, rueful smile on her lips. Human, he say. I thought I was supposed to be the superior species here. Jack chuckled, the sound warm and rich in the quiet of the ship's cabin. Oh, you're definitely superior, princess, in every way that matters. And then, in a moment of breathless anticipation, he leaned down and captured her lips with his own. Zara stiffened for a moment, then melted into the kiss, her arms winding around Jack's neck as she returned his passion with equal fervor. They made love there, in the narrow bunk of the ship's cabin, their bodies twining together in a dance as old as the stars themselves. And as they moved together, all the pain and fear and desperation of their ordeal melted away, replaced by a fierce, joyous connection that burned brighter than any sun. Afterward, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Zara traced the scars on Jack's chest with a gentle finger. I never thought I could feel this way, she murmured, her voice soft with wonder. Not about anyone, least of all a human, but you've changed everything, Jack Riker. Jack pressed a kiss to her forehead, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. And you've changed me, princess. Made me want to be better, to be worthy of you. But even as they basked in the glow of their newfound love, reality began to creep in at the edges. The ship was taking them back to civilization, back to their old lives, and the thought filled them both with a creeping dread. For Zara, it meant facing her duties, her guilt, her failures as a leader. For Jack, it meant standing trial for his crimes, facing the consequences of a life spent running from the law. They clung to each other all the tighter, as if by sheer force of will they could make this moment last forever. But deep down, they both knew that their time together was drawing to a close. It was Zara who voiced it first, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I don't want to let you go, she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. I wish we could just stay here, in this moment, forever. Jack swallowed hard, his own eyes stinging. I know, princess. Believe me, I know. But we both have our paths to walk, our destinies to fulfill. He took her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. But no matter what happens, no matter where our journeys take us, I will always love you, Zara of the Alphans, always and forever. Zara smiled through her tears, bringing their joined hands to her lips. And I will always love you, Jack Riker of Earth, in this life and whatever comes after. They sealed their vow with a kiss, pouring all their love and longing into that one perfect moment. And as the ship carried them onward, towards an uncertain future, they held fast to that love, that unbreakable bond forged in the fires of adversity. Come what may, they would face it together. For they had found something infinitely precious amidst the stars, not just love, but understanding, acceptance, and the kind of soul-deep connection that comes along once in a lifetime. And that was worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Daring escape. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, the stars outside the viewport snapping back into pinpricks of light. Jack and Zara stood on the bridge, hand in hand, their faces grim as they watched the approaching planet grow larger on the view screen. It was a hub world, a seething mass of life and commerce at the crossroads of a dozen star systems. And hanging in orbit above it, like a swarm of angry hornets, was a fleet of Galactic Council enforcement ships. Jack's grip tightened on Zara's hand. They're here for me, he said, his voice tight with tension. The bounty on my head, it's too big for them to ignore. Zara turned to him, her dark eyes fierce with determination. They will not have you, she declared, the steel of command in her voice. I will not allow it. But even as she spoke, the comm crackled to life, a harsh, authoritative voice filling the bridge. Unidentified vessel, this is the Galactic Council. You are harboring a wanted criminal. Prepare to be boarded and searched. Jack and Zara exchanged a look of dread. They both knew what would happen if the council got their hands on Jack. A sham trial, a swift execution, and an unmarked grave on some desolate prison world. But before they could react, the ship shuddered again, harder this time. The Council ships were opening fire, their energy beams stitching across the hull in searing bursts of light. "They're trying to disable us," Jack growled, lunging for controls. "Strap in, Princess. This is going to get bumpy." With a deft twist of the control yoke, he sent the ship into a dizzying spiral, the inertial dampeners struggling to compensate as they corkscrewed through the barrage of enemy fire. Zara clung to her seat, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration as Jack wove a daring path through the chaos. But even as they dodged and weaved, the Council ships closed in, their tractor beams reaching out to snare the fleeing vessel. Jack gritted his teeth, pushing the engines to their limit, but it was no use. They were caught, like flies in a web. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, a new voice crackled over the comm. "Jack Riker, this is the Starfarer. Looks like you could use a hand, old friend." Jack's head snapped up, a grin spreading across his face as he recognized the voice. It was his old partner, a grizzled smuggler named Caleb who'd saved his bacon more times than he could count. "Caleb, you old space dog," Jack whooped. "I've never been happier to hear your voice. Think you can get us out of this mess?" "Just sit tight and let me work my magic," Caleb drawled. And with that, a sleek, silver ship dropped out of hyperspace, its guns blazing as it tore into the Council fleet with reckless abandon. In the confusion, Jack saw his chance. With a quick toggle of the controls, he disengaged the tractor beams, sending their ship hurtling away from the battle. Zara let out a breathless laugh, her hand finding Jack's once more as they rocketed towards freedom. But their elation was short-lived. As they neared the planet's atmosphere, a new ship appeared on their scopes, a vicious, predatory thing, all jagged edges and bristling weapons. Jack's blood ran cold as he recognized the markings on its hull. "Bounty hunters," he spat. "The Council must have put a price on our heads." Zora's grip tightened on his hand, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Then we will face them together," she said, "as we have faced every challenge before." Jack nodded grimly, his jaw set with determination. He knew the odds were against them, a single battered ship against a vessel built for war. But he also knew that he had something the bounty hunters didn't, a cause worth fighting for, and a love that would never die. And so, with a defiant roar of the engines, he charged headlong into battle, Zara at his side, ready to face whatever fate had in store. They had come too far, fought too hard, to let anyone or anything tear them apart now. This was their moment, their chance to seize their destiny with both hands. And as the stars blazed past and the enemy loomed ever closer, Jack and Zara knew that they would emerge victorious, or go down in flames together. Either way, it would be a hell of a ride.